Thank you, Mr. President. America has changed. The murder of an unarmed Black man at the hands of 4 police officers has changed us forever. This past week, we have witnessed countless protests, rallies, and cries for justice. While George Floyd's death is devastating, it has, however, awakened the American consciousness, a consciousness that has allowed years of government arrogance and neglect to build into government oppression. As I watched and listened to protesters, I heard and saw something that was neglected by the media because their attention was focused on the negativity. If you listen to the chorus of voices screaming out to anyone that would listen, you would have heard that the people are tired of government oppression. This oppression is not about minor inconveniences that interrupt your daily living routines. The voices we heard says something that we have been ignoring for decades. These voices told politicians to stop turning a blind eye to injustice, hatred, and intolerance. That is government oppression. These voices told you to never forget about the city of Flint, whose entire water system was poisoned and not one person went to prison. That is government oppression. Those voices said to you, you just can't look at the Second Amendment and ignore all the rest. That is government oppression. Those voices told us that we don't want symbols of hate in our communities, and we don't want them in our capital either, because that is government oppression. Those were the voices of every human being who has suffered the abuse by those who we entrust to be guardians of our safety and have felt the weight of a knee on their side of their neck. And no matter how many times those voices screamed, "I cannot breathe," the weight got just heavier. That is government oppression. Those were the voices of Detroit public school students who filed a class action lawsuit charging the state of Michigan because they were denied the fundamental right to literacy. 66 years after Brown versus the Board of Education was decided and was determined that separate and unequal is unconstitutional. And yet here we are. That is government oppression. Those were the voices of anger, the voices of citizens who see 2 systems of justice in America: a justice system for the rich and politically connected who can be released from prison because of COVID-19, and yet another system of justice for poor, indigent, and mentally ill who cannot afford legal representation. That is government oppression. Those were the voices of disbelief because Dylann Roof was provided high-level security after killing Black Christians in a church during a Bible study. But Ahmaud Arbery can't go out for a jog because he's a Black man in a white neighborhood. That is government oppression. So colleagues who feel that government is oppressing you, I simply ask you to listen to those voices of the generation behind us, those voices across this nation, and perhaps you can understand what it's like to be Black in America and be faced with the real government oppression. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like my remarks printed in the Journal for today.